let's go over rotation, what it is, what it means for you, your collection, and the formats that you probably play the most so you can be prepared and get the most value out of the game. And we're going to look at the card pool difference between Standard and Alchemy because something is different this year, and we're going to go through all the details right now. Welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to tap the like button and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos. So we're going to talk about rotation. So rotation used to be a very simple thing. And it's basically when new sets come out, the old sets move out of Standard, they're no longer valid. And so it just keeps things moving along. It keeps the game changing, the meta changing. It means you're going to get new cards to play with. But those old cards have to go at some point. Whenever you feel like you're playing against the same 5 decks over and over again, and it starts to feel a bit stale, that's exactly the thing that rotation is designed to solve. We don't want to feel like that. We want to keep things changing, so that's what rotation is there for. And it used to be very simple. We would get 4 sets every year, and when we have 8 sets in Standard, the 9th set that comes in, the next one that comes in, will mean that the oldest 4 will move out. So back in 2021 to 2022, when Midnight Hunt came in, we lost the 4 oldest sets. That's Throne of Eldraine, Theros, Ikoria, and Core Set 2021. They all moved out. They were only then playable in Historic, no longer playable in Standard. And so then it makes room for the new sets. So you go from having 8 sets in Standard to then 1 comes in, 4 more go out, and we're down to 5 sets again. So it's always between 5 and 8 sets. But this time there's a change, which means that the sets from Standard can't be up to 2 years old, as they were before. We're going to skip the rotation this year, so now they can be up to 3 years old. So it means instead of having between 5 and 8 sets in Standard at any time, we're going to have between 9 and 12 sets legal in Standard. So this is how it's going to work from now on. Having the larger format, having more sets that are legal in the format, means there's about a 50% larger card pool, which means there might be a greater diversity in deck building, possibly, but it can also increase the complexity of the format because then you have more cards that interact, and with more interactions and more mechanics to consider, then there are a lot more things that could possibly happen. So you need to be aware of this larger variety of cards that are available, especially when you're playing against someone and you're trying to guess what cards they might have. There's now a lot more cards that it could be. This also means there's generally a higher power level to the format because the best cards are going to be the ones that are at the top meta decks. And if there's a card that comes out in a new set that's more powerful than one from, 2 sets ago, and they're very similar, but one just happens to be more powerful, you're just going to see those more higher powered cards are going to be in the top meta decks much more often. But also the synergies mean there's going to be more power level as well. So if you just look at the enchantment deck, for example, in Standard, there are going to be more enchantments that come out. So if there's anything from the new set that can replace anything that's in the existing deck, then that deck power level is going to be increased, at least partially. So we might get, when we had Ossification come out, it replaced things like Borrowed Time or the other exile cards that people use as their removal in that deck. Having the larger card pool also means it could potentially be harder for newer players to build their Standard collection because there are more great cards to collect. We're not just going to have rares from the last 5 sets, it's going to be rares from the last 9 sets. So there's a lot more for people to collect, and it's going to take a little bit longer. Although when you're building a deck, you still only need the same number of wild cards. So I guess if you want to build one deck, it's fine. If you want to build a couple of decks, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. But if you want to build a very big variety of decks and try all the different decks and ideas that people are coming out with, you're going to need more wildcards and you're going to need to use them very wisely. So there is a difference between Standard and Alchemy this year in that Standard is skipping rotation, but Alchemy isn't. So with Alchemy, we get a few extra sets released each year. We have the mini sets for each release. And then we have a main alchemy set every year, or at least we have the last couple of years. We've had the Baldur's Gate set last year and the Lord of the Rings set coming this year, which has been only alchemy legal. They're not allowed in standard at all. So this means that alchemy is going to lose some things this year, this rotation, that standard is not going to lose. So let's have a look at the differences between alchemy and standard when rotation happens. So we have Innistrad Midnight Hunt is the oldest set that is currently legal in standard and alchemy. So we have that. We have Crimson Vow. This is just in standard. We've got Kamigawa. We've got Streets of New Capenna. And then we've got Dominaria United, Brothers War, Phyrexia All Will Be One, March of the Machine, and Aftermath. So in Alchemy, not only do we have all those that are available in Standard, but we also have a specific Alchemy Innistrad set. We have an Alchemy set for Kamigawa, for New Capenna. Then we have Baldur's Gate, which is the whole set by itself. Those ones are going to be rotating out for Alchemy. And then the oldest ones available in Alchemy from September onwards will be the Dominaria United, Brothers War, Phyrexia, and March of the Machine that are currently available in Standard. And then they'll also have the Alchemy Dominaria, Alchemy Brothers War, Alchemy Phyrexia, and the Lord of the Rings whole set as well. And then obviously Eldraine is coming out, and that will be legal in Standard and in Alchemy as well. So we're going to have all these other sets from Midnight Hunt to Baldur's Gate that are going to be leaving Alchemy, and then Standard is just getting new ones added. Nothing is leaving from there. So that means Alchemy is going to have a smaller card pool than Standard when rotation happens. At the moment, Alchemy just has all these extra cards, all these other Alchemy sets, the Lord of the Rings set, the Baldur's Gate set. They're all extra in Alchemy. So right now, Alchemy has a larger card pool, but after rotation, it's going to have a smaller card pool because Alchemy is losing cards and Standard isn't. And not only does it mean that the card pool is just a different size, there's actually some really important cards, some top tier meta cards that are actually rotating out of Alchemy and won't be in there anymore. So it means that the decks that you're going to see in Alchemy, if you do play it, are going to be very different to the ones in Standard. So if you feel like Standard is a bit stale, if you want to try something new, I don't really play Alchemy very much. I've tried it a few times, but if you aren't too happy with how Standard is, you should probably try Alchemy, especially if some of these cards that will be rotating out are the ones that you particularly don't like. So let's have a look at a few of the cards that are going to be leaving Alchemy. So these are just a handful of the cards that are going to be missing from Alchemy after rotation. And these are ones that are going to see that have seen a lot of play, might currently see a lot of play, and are going to just disappear entirely. So we have things like Thalia, Brutal Cathar, Adeline. So the mono white aggro style deck is really going to take a big hit. And also we have Farewell is going to go as well, so that's going to make a big difference to the blue white control decks. And then we've got Make Disappear, which you see all over the place at the moment. That's going to disappear. We've got Memory Deluge, which is really important in control decks. We've got Leer and Hullbreaker Horror. You don't see them as much anymore. Sometimes you do, but they used to be a really, really big, important deck made out of those two. That's going to be gone as well. We've got things like Tenacious Underdog that's going to go, Graveyard Trespasser, and don't forget, in Alchemy at the moment, these cards are still legal. Invoke Despair and Meat Hook Massacre is still currently legal in Alchemy. That's going to go with rotation as well. We've got things like Kamano Faces Carcassonne, which has already lost haste in Alchemy, so the creature doesn't come in with haste. That's going to be gone completely. We've got Bloodthirsty Adversary is going to be gone. Thundering Raiju, which you see quite a lot at the moment, that's going to be gone as well. And things like Burn Down the House, gone. Okay, and in green, we've got Kami of Transience being lost from the enchantment deck. That's no more. We've got Fight Rigging, a great way of cheating out some big creatures. That's going. Topiary Stomper for ramping. That's gone. Titan of Industry has been replaced by things like Atali these days, but still, it's a really, really good creature to cheat out or to blink or whatever you do with it. It's going to be gone. Then we've got some of the 2 or 3 color cards here that are going to be gone as well. We've got Denix gone, Blood Tithe Harvester's going, Onycol Anvil. I'm quite happy about that. I hate that card. We've got Jukai Naturalist again from the enchantment deck, so that deck is going to take a really big hit. We've got Reckoner Bankbuster that's still legal in Alchemy. It's not in Standard anymore, but it's going to be leaving Alchemy as well. Things like Rafine. I haven't seen Esper Legends that much recently, but that's going as well. Helena and Elena, which you see sometimes, not very often, but still, it's a really, really good card that's going. And Jetmir, card I really like. You don't see that often, but it works really well with huge token decks. Ever since Meathook Massacre went out of Standard, Jetmir's working a lot better, although, like I said, you don't see everyone using it, but it's gone. It's going to be gone. And don't forget, we're also going to lose all of these really useful channel lands from Kamigawa as well. So they're all going to be gone. So that's what Alchemy is going to lose in September, and that's just a hint of what we're going to lose from Standard next year, although apart from Invoke Despair, Meathook Massacre, and Bankbuster, all these other ones are going to stay in Standard and be there for another year. So if you don't like these cards, if you hate playing against Farewell, if you hate Graveyard Trespasser, I don't know. If you hate those cards, then you might want to try Alchemy, because Alchemy is not going to have those cards. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to be better. There are other cards in Alchemy that you might not be used to playing. I'm not used to playing. But either way, if you want the option of playing without these cards in the format, then the option is there. So, with the card pool between Standard and Alchemy, if we just look at something like the number of rares that we have available, so like in March of the Machine, we have 65 different rares, 20 different mythics. If we just look at those numbers, sets that are currently available in Standard, we have about 700 unique rare or mythic cards. Now, I'm just using this as an example to have a look at the different sizes of the card pools. It might not be the best way of going about it, because obviously we have all the common and uncommon cards as well. But to be honest, I think the ratios here are going to be about the same anyway. And what really matters is the number of really important playable cards, but to go through every single card would take forever. So we're just going to use this as a way to estimate how big the card pool is going to be between Standard and Alchemy. So Standard has about 700 different rare and mythic cards at the moment. Alchemy has just over 1,000 at the moment, because Alchemy also has all the ones from Lord of the Rings, from Baldur's Gate, and also all these extra Alchemy sets. They tend to be 15 rares, 5 mythics, around that. 15 rares for that one. 15 and 5, and then obviously we've got lots in Lord of the Rings as well. So there's rares and mythics in Alchemy, which are going to affect the types of decks people will play and the power level of the format. So 700 in Standard, about 1,000 in Alchemy at the moment. Now, when rotation happens, Standard will gain the new cards from Eldraine without losing any. And so it will become around 800 rares or mythics that will be in Standard. And Alchemy will lose everything that came before Dominaria, so we'll end up around 600 rares and mythics. So Standard will have about 800, and Alchemy will have about 600. So Standard will be the larger card pool in that first set after rotation. But when it comes time for rotation to happen next year for Standard, we'll also have another 3 or so sets added to Standard, and it will likely have over 1,000 unique rares and mythics in Standard. And if Alchemy keeps getting the extra mini add-ons for each set and the extra dedicated Alchemy set like it has this year and last year with Lord of the Rings and Baldur's Gate, then the Alchemy card pool is likely to be over 1,000 rares and mythics as well. So actually, the card pools between both of these formats seem like they're going to be pretty much the same, at least just before the next rotation. I guess after that rotation happens again, then they're both going to lose lots of cards. So that means the card pools between Standard and Alchemy are actually going to be very similar, at least just before the next rotation in 2024. So where I used to think this 2 or 3 year rotation would make Alchemy a smaller card pool and easier for new players to get into, it actually won't be that much different at all between Alchemy and Standard, because previously, when they had the same rotation schedule, Alchemy just had the larger card pool because it had all the extra cards being added to it, and that was one reason why a lot of people didn't like Alchemy, and one reason why it was harder for new players to get into. But now, making Standard up to 3 years and Alchemy only up to 2 years, it balances out because Alchemy has 2 years where there are more cards coming out that are only legal in Alchemy, and Standard has 3 years where it doesn't have the extra Alchemy cards. So it works out about the same. Some other things that will change when the rotation happens is the jump-in packs should change. They have had a recent change where they went from being all of the different currently standard legal sets to being just Lord of the Rings. But when Eldraine comes out, it makes sense that they're either just going to add Eldraine sets to those to the jump-in event, so you can have Lord of the Rings and Eldraine, or they might make it only Eldraine, but I feel like they might not lose Lord of the Rings. So we'll see what happens with that. But either way, some new jump-in packs are always added, so you should see those come up in the jump-in event after September. And because all of the older cards, the older sets, are not in the jump-in events, whether you play Lord of the Rings or not, whether you play Alchemy or not, it might still be worth doing the jump-in events for the Eldraine cards to start getting a boost with those. But I'll break that down when it comes to it. So when we know what's actually going to be in the jump-in events, I can have a look at that and we can see what is the best way of building up your collection of the new set once it comes out, because things might be different. We also have the 2-color starter decks that have just changed, and so they don't include any cards from before Dominaria, and they do include some Alchemy specific cards. So they are technically there for Alchemy. If you want to play those in Standard, you'll have to take out any Alchemy cards and replace them with other Standard legal cards. But if you're going to play Standard, I'd recommend you build your own deck from scratch anyway, or net deck, whatever's easier for you. The starter decks are only really good to play against each other. They're not very high powered, they're not particularly good. We'll also see the draft events will update, so they won't include any cards from the sets that will not be legal in Alchemy. So we shouldn't see any drafts for sets before Dominaria, because everything is kind of focusing around Alchemy. Even if they're only standard legal ones, that's not going to include cards in Alchemy that are going to rotate out or that won't be legal in Alchemy anymore. So we should only see everything from Dominaria up until now in any draft events once rotation happens. So there are some pros and cons to rotation happening. One of the biggest pros that I think about rotation happening is that it keeps the format evolving. It would be so boring to me if we kept playing the same decks over and over again forever. And maybe that's why I haven't got into Historic and Explorer so much, because you do have a lot of the decks kind of stay around and stay the same for a long time. I quite like the fact that with Standard, every so often, we have to move some old things out of the way and learn some new tactics and learn some new combinations and see what new things come out. I quite like that. The other pro with rotation happening is, or with the rotation changing at the moment to 3 years for Standard, is that wildcards are now going to have a longer lifetime value even if you don't play Historic or Explorer, because if you craft some cards from the Eldraine set, they're going to be in your collection for Standard for 3 years, whereas before, at best, it could only be 2 years. So wild cards are now even more valuable. We're going to have to be very careful about how we use our wild cards, because you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of them. You don't want to craft things that are just kind of silly decks or meme decks, and you're not going to get very much use out of them. So you want to make sure that the things we're crafting with our wild cards are things that are going to be valuable for a long time. So we'll have a look at that when Eldraine comes out, but at least it means wild cards will increase in value in that way. The biggest con to having rotation, and the biggest shame, which I've heard a lot of people say, is that you lose cards that you really enjoy playing. So there are some cards that rotated out last year that I never really got the full potential of. I never really got to play them quite as much as I wanted to, and suddenly they were gone. And yeah, you can't play them in Standard anymore. Obviously, like I said, Historic and Explorer are always there. You can play it, or you can play it in direct matches against friends, or you can beat up Sparky with it if you want to. But yeah, they won't be available in Standard anymore. So if you really enjoy using things like Memory Deluge and Farewell in a blue-white control deck, when that rotates out, which won't be this year for Standard, it'll be next year, but when it does, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to look for other cards to replace it that might not be as good, and there might be lots of other things that have to rotate out. So the deck that you enjoy playing might not be there anymore in Standard. So that's the biggest shame, is that you're going to have to learn new things. Some people like change, some people don't like change, but that's the biggest thing with rotation. You might have also seen the renewal egg pop up when you've updated the app since it came out, and that is basically some rewards that you can get when Wilds of Eldraine is released. And inside that egg, it will contain 5 rare cards from any existing standard legal sets. I'm guessing because of Alchemy and because of the last 4 moving out, it won't include anything before Dominaria United, but there will be 5 rare cards in there, and there will also be 4 other rare cards from Wilds of Eldraine and 1 mythic card from Wilds of Eldraine as well. So basically, when rotation happens, you're going to get 9 rare and 1 mythic card given to you for free. I'm guessing the duplicate protection on that. If they're individual card rewards and they work like other individual card rewards or ICRs, then there won't be any duplicate protection on those 5 rares that you're getting for the existing sets. So if you already have 4 of a certain copy of a rare, and that's going to be the individual card reward, then you'll get 20 gems instead of getting a card. So I think that's what's most likely going to happen, as that's what happens with other ICRs, individual card rewards. So we'll see. You might get a few gems or you might get cards, but you will get 5 cards from the new set as well. So that's everything we've got on rotation at the moment. There's going to be different between Standard and Alchemy. If you don't care about Alchemy, if you don't play Alchemy, it's not going to make a difference to you, I guess. Either way, it just means that things are going to carry on in Standard. We're not going to lose things, we're just going to get new cards added, and things might start to feel a bit of a higher power level or a bit bigger for your collection. But it's going to give us other things we can work with, other combinations we can make up, and maybe look at some old cards that would have rotated out. I've actually made lots of decks recently that use cards that would be rotating, and lucky for us, we get another year of these. So if they're cards that we enjoy, then it's a good thing. So yeah, that's all we've got to say now. So let me know what you think in the comments below about rotation. Is there anything that I've missed? Are there any questions you have about rotation that I haven't answered in the video? Let me know, and let me know what you think. Are you happy that things aren't rotating out in Standard? Or would you rather have a bigger change? So all those things that are leaving Alchemy, if they were leaving Standard, would you be much happier? Or are they the cards that you like to use? Then you maybe wouldn't be very happy about it. Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for any future videos. If you don't want to miss out on them, that's what you need to do. Thanks for watching this one to the end, and I will see you in the next one.